This week on Shift Points, an intake repair turns into an intake swap on my 86 C10 truck. Thank you guys so much for joining. Parking outside and there was a ton of He started this project. Found a piece of brass he's gonna take. Alright everyone. Alright guys, this week we're back on the C10 truck. This truck has been a little bit of a thorn in my side lately. If you guys have followed us on social media and here on YouTube, you have seen me put up a bunch of shorts working on this thing. We're trying to get the thermostat housing stop leaking, and then the big thing is my gauge sending unit that's in the top of the intake. The other day I was working on it and realized that I had a pretty significant leak around it, so I pulled it out. When I pulled it out, realized there was a pretty significant crack on the intake manifold right there at that boss where that is threaded into. So in the time that we kind of just needed to get it fixed, I packed some JB Weld in here on that sending unit, or on that boss there on the intake manifold, and it helped with the leak. It's definitely still leaking some. You can actually see some down there on the intake manifold right there where it's been leaking, and it's just not a good situation. So we're going to, this week, we're going to take this thing off. We're going to pull the intake manifold off of this thing, and Dad's going to weld that up, get that fixed up, and we'll get this thing put back on. So that's what we're going to do this week. Try to get this thing through. You guys have watched any of our other videos, you know this thing has a new 350 motor that's going to go in it, and a Tremec 5-speed we're going to put behind it. That's going to come at some point, maybe this year, hopefully this year. We'll just see how everything goes. But anyway, so we're just trying to get this thing through until we're able to do that work. And a few of our shorts, you've seen me use this guy. It's a fluid evacuator. It's really makes this very easy. There's no petcock on this radiator anywhere that I can see, that I've been able to find at least. So this makes this really nice. You can take and run this down in the radiator and then set it to the evacuate setting. Click down on that, and then all you got to do is pump this and it will start pulling fluid out of the radiator. As long as you have a cross flow radiator like this, it'll drain this all the way down. You can make sure it's drained. I just pull it till it's a good ways full. That makes sure that the fluid is down low enough where we can go ahead and pull the hose off and everything like that, and we don't have a bunch of fluid in there. It's pulled it out, everything's ready to go, and that'll be kind of the first step on getting this thing pulled out. Alright, so Dad pulled the distributor cap off because we got to pull the distributor out to pull the intake off. And you can see what he's done here. If you look back on the firewall, you see that mark, that line on the firewall. He has got this marked so that when we put this distributor back in, we can put that rotary button pointed directly at that line where it was. That means when we put this thing back together, everything's going to still be in time. We don't have to worry about it going crazy, being 180 degrees out, or all the things you've heard for things like that. So we want to make sure that when we put the distributor back in, it's pointed directly at that line. That'll have everything right where it needs to be, so when we fire this thing back up, we won't have any issues. To talk about the engine a little bit more, this is a 750 Brawler that we got from one of Dad's friends. This carburetor has done us very well. It's way more carburetor than this little motor needs, but it's like all the nicer pieces that you see on this motor, they're all planned to go on the other motor that I have for this truck. So over the years, I've slowly collected them, kind of got rid of the not as nice stuff that was on this motor, just put it on here, I guess, to kind of break it in, I guess, for lack of a better word. So all this newer stuff that's on this little engine is going to go on the new one. But this Brawler, Dad says it's the best street driven carburetor out of the box that he's ever worked on. So I mean, he's worked on a lot of carburetors, so that kind of tells you about it a lot. But like I said, we've had really good luck out of this thing, and so it'll probably continue living on something from here on out. The other thing that Dad is doing right now, he has a distributor wrench here. Did you make this?
No.
No, okay. I was wondering about that. Okay.
I think it's a Craftsman. I cut it and turn it around so I could get into it stuff a little easier, but I think it's a Craftsman.
Gotcha. So he has this distributor wrench. I don't know how many people have seen one.
KD.
KD, okay. So I mean, you can basically, there's a retaining plate back down there that holds the distributor in place, that locks it down whenever you set the timing. And this just allows you to come all the way up here, put it on the socket, or put it on the bolt, and then get it twisted out. Get everything loosened a little easier. This motor has always been a pain to get that locked down on though, for some reason. I don't know exactly why. At this point we have everything stripped off. The only thing we have left to do is pull the bolts out of the intake itself. We should be ready to get this thing pulled out. Man, look at that oil. That's a whole lot of oil there. So we'll get this thing pulled off of here, and then we should be ready to start doing the repair. We do something, we really do it. There we go.
Pretty good. Yeah. Flex, no flex, whatever, silicone.
Alright, you guys saw it. It's out, ready to be repaired. I'll show you kind of the internals of the old engine here. Oh, it's pretty clean. It's really not too bad. Yeah, so anyway, now the other thing that we have to do is I've got to find a set of intake manifold gaskets. We had to pull this thing off to make sure we got the right ones. So we'll go ahead and look and see if, hopefully, fingers crossed, the O'Reilly store is open today because it's Sunday, and they'll have this, and we can go ahead and get all this cleaned off. I'll catch you guys up. So I brought the intake in here. You can see it sitting right there. Boom. Brought it in here and started cleaning it up. Got everything cleaned up, and then because we were just so focused on what we were doing, we weren't really thinking about it. Dad noticed these two holes down in here in the plenum, and so that got us like actually looking at this intake. Realized that it's a spread bore intake. Again, I know this should have been very obvious, but the spacer, we had our spacer on there, and it just had it covered. Just not something we really thought about when we put this thing on at all. Because I remember when we put this intake on, we were kind of in a similar situation where we were kind of like thrashing it to get back together because I had to go to Charlotte when I lived down there. And so we put this back on and we just didn't think about it. It has EGR provisions, which we have blanked off a long time ago. Dad made these blanks and bolts and put silicone behind it and had all these sealed up anyway. This bolt is almost impossible to get to. So there's a few things that we don't like about this intake in general, but we have this intake. This was back here on the shelf. Because I have kind of started collecting parts over the past little while, and this was one of the ones that I had collected. Basically, square bore for a Holly, so it's going to fit our brawler way better. It has all the same provisions that we need, that we can hook up the gauges and everything. I think this is a different size, but I can put the gauge here instead of over there. So the other thing is it doesn't have any of the EGR stuff, so all of these are way easier to get to, going to be way better to tighten up. We still have a vacuum provision here that'll go to, I think that's for the transmission. I'm pretty sure. It is, okay, yeah. I think there's a hard line that goes to this, it goes to the transmission. So basically the decision was, put this one back for us to forget that it's broken, and then pull it out one day, put it on, and then realize that it's broken. So we'll put that back, and then we're going to slap this guy on and use this. Again, because Dad is who he is, he had a set of intake manifold gaskets and a new distributor gasket here in stock. So we can go ahead and start putting this thing back together with the Performer EPS versus the regular old Performer right here. We've got this thing started to get this thing decked out here. Went ahead and got the vacuum in. Dad had put this, I don't know if you noticed, Dad had put this in, but I couldn't put this on. You can see, if you look at this one, how much closer this port is compared to this one. Because we had them out in the outer holes there for the square bore, to fit the square bore spacer, so, and the carburetor. So you can see how much closer those were, or so how much closer this one is. This intake is a little taller than that intake. We looked it up and looked at it. The horsepower and torque numbers are very minimally higher on this EPS compared to that intake over there. But I mean, that's not really important. The important thing is that it's not cracked and we can kind of use everything we need to do. So I've got these all taped up and ready to go. Just got to get them tightened up. And Dad's going to finish putting these in. Little blue Loctite, medium strength Loctite on those, keep them from backing out. And this right here is a mounting position for the throttle return spring that Dad made when we put that intake on the truck in the first place. Dad got to looking at the distributor cap here, and you can see there's a whole lot of corrosion and buildup there on the contacts in here. So went ahead and the same thing on the rotor button. But anyway, AutoZone and Weaverville, they actually had an MSD cap and rotor for this thing in stock. So picked that up today, and then so he's going to swap out this rotor and the cap, put that coil in it because that was all acting fine. So he's going to do that. At the same time, I'm going to take my scraper out here, and what we're going to do is go ahead and get this, all the head surface here, get that cleaned off, get that good and clean and ready to put the other intake back on. What we'll end up having to do, we'll have to put some RTV here on the front and rear, and when we do that, then, well actually before we do that, we're going to bring it out here and test fit it and kind of get an idea of how much RTV we need to put on the valleys here. But like I said, first off, I'm going to get this good and clean, and we've got paper towels in here, so all of that's going to get caught in here, and we'll go ahead and then I can just pull the paper towels out, just kind of a little trick to help keep it out. Anything extra, I'll go ahead and bring a vacuum in here and vacuum it out real good, make sure that's all really good and clean before we put anything back in here. He's taking a little bit of gray RTV and putting on them, and that'll help keep them stuck in place and sealing up the water ports. You do that, it'll keep it held up in place, so when you place the intake down on it, they'll stay in place while you're doing that, and then you can get your bolts in there and started. One down, one to go. Alright, I got this bad boy set down in place. That is now going around and torquing them. What are you torquing them down to, Daddy?
25 first and then 30.
Okay, so he'll go across all of them, starting with the inside and working his way out. Go to 25 and these are 30.
Yeah, go to 25 to 30.
25, and then he'll do the same pattern going from the inside to the outside. We did put some sealer on this. I noticed, I guess when we put that other intake, we didn't put any sort of sealer, especially on these two center bolts here. There was some oil that was pooling up in the intake, and noticed that the bolts were saturated with oil, and I think it was running up past them. So we put sealer on all of them this time, just to kind of keep that from happening. This thing just seems to be a little bit of an all-around better intake. So I guess we'll find out here in a little while. So I got everything torqued down and in place, and one thing that Dad was checking, he was checking to make sure that the RTV had pushed out. So that should show you, yeah, there you go. So the RTV has pushed out, so we've got a good seal there on the intake. And if you come to the front, you can see the same, you can see there you go. So that RTV has pushed out, has got a good seal on the front and the back. We'll let that cure while we put the rest of this stuff on the intake. Alright, so we're ready to drop the distributor back in place. Now remember, we made that mark back there on the firewall, and then we want that rotor pointed directly at that whenever this drops back in place. Everything is back together, all the hoses are hooked up, we didn't put any water back in it. We want to just check, make sure that we're in time. So Everything's hooked up. I'm gonna jump in here and see what it does when I start to fire it up. You ready? Hook up the battery. Turns out this thing won't do anything because the battery's not hooked up. What was that?
Vacuum leak under that splicer.
Dang. One thing that we noticed and we were worried this was gonna happen, the carburetor spacer that we had in there had actually formed itself to the old intake manifold, and we thought the gasket would take care of it, but clearly it hasn't.
Nuts on the carburetor.
Oh no. Never mind. The carburetor's definitely loose. I never tightened those nuts down. So the carburetor has studs like you guys saw them. I definitely, yeah, oh yeah, I never tighten those down. Yeah, my bad. All right. Hey, fire me. Dad has clobbered his head on that and on that like 5 times so far.
Part of the deal, I reckon. I think we got it in time, though.
Yeah, round 2. Good. Okay. I'm thinking we think the idle's up a little too high. Dad's trying a different setting on the vacuum advance that's on the distributor. Definitely be getting this thing out and taking it for a drive, see how it does. Found the first thing that we need to work on, which is this thing doesn't, the kickdown doesn't work. So with this being a little higher, we were worried it might be out of adjustment a little bit. So anyway, that's definitely not happening. When he goes full throttle here, it just falls on his face. It's not downshifting like it's supposed to. So we got to fix that. That's all so far. Dad went ahead and turned the timer down a little more. Idle. Or sorry, idle. Sorry, I had timing on my mind. Turn the idle down. He actually advanced the timing up there a few minutes ago. All right, Dad made a little timing adjustment, made a vacuum change on the distributor, and we adjusted the kickdown a little bit. So hopefully that. Feels better than it did last time already. So that change right there was really good. This thing feels way better than it did the first time we took it out. So like I said, that was a timing change. We advanced the timing, he bumped the idle down a little, and then we adjusted the kick down a little bit. So that should have this like pretty close, or we'll drive it a little more and just see where it kind of make sure everything's kind of how we want it to be, especially right here when he's about to stand on it.
That shifts perfect. What I want to try now, switch those vacuum.
Now that the downshift's right and everything.
Yeah, right now I've got the vacuum and fans on intake vacuum. Then I have the heater controls on the port. I want to switch them now and see what
Alright, we had one more little adjustment there. Everything seems good with this thing. I'm going to drive it for the next few days. Since I was running the cameras, I wasn't driving it. Like Dad said, it kind of makes more sense for me to drive it. I'm the one that drives it every day. I'll be able to tell a little bit more about it than him because he hasn't driven it as much. So we're really happy with this. I think in general, if anything, even if performance-wise it didn't change anything, which I don't think it did. I don't think the numbers are even there for it to make sense, especially on this old worn-out 305. But if anything, we should have multiple oil leaks stopped. We should have at least one pretty good coolant link stopped. And I just all around like this intake better. Just how it's set up, how all the ports are, how we're able to get to the bolts better, how we don't have the EGR junk on it. All of that stuff's just better. So I'm way happier with this manifold. I'm really glad it's turned out this way. So I think we'll drive this for a little while. Hopefully, fingers crossed, this is kind of the last time you see like an episode about this truck until it's time to actually do the full-on engine and transmission swap on it, hopefully later this year, but we'll see how everything goes. So thank you guys so much for joining us this week. As always, hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you do, hit the subscribe button. It helps us. It gets us in front of more people, and then that lets us continue to make more and more videos and do this stuff that we really enjoy anyway. And if you haven't, follow us on social media. Do that. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of those places. We're on there putting up stuff every single day. So we appreciate it so much. Thanks for everyone that's watched. Thanks for everyone that's hit subscribe already. And we'll see you guys next week.